Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Neal Coolong, sir, welcome. It's great to have you back.
It's great to be here as always. Coming off a late night, but it's always fun to be able to hop right on and talk to you guys about what happened.
All right, so let's get to what happened. Obviously, one of the pivotal plays is the taunting call. What was your thought?
In all sincerity, and people are going to say that I'm making this up, but I tweeted something out about Cassius Marsh as he was doing it, and there had to have been a full minute that went by before a flag was thrown. Maybe it wasn't exactly a full minute, but on the north side of time with that. That's how long he carried on with it. I said in August, leading into the season, that the alleged enforced emphasis on the taunting rule, which is really an expansion of the taunting rule. It's not an emphasizing a rule that you call anyway. They look for more things now. But I felt sincerely it was going to be a problem. It was going to create more of a sideshow for the result of a game, more controversy, which the league doesn't really need. All to stop something that can be stopped just by calling what you're supposed to call. I don't know what else you can call what Cassius Marsh did other than taunting. I felt, and I'm aware of the lack of popularity in the NFL's direction with this, but I felt what he did fit both the letter and the spirit of the rule. If the officials are even remotely aware of who the players are, which, I'm not sure you're aware of this, but they are. They know the league up and down. They know who the players are. They're fully aware that Cassius Marsh was a Steeler in August and got cut. They will begrudge him the opportunity to maybe, kind of look at the sidelines with his shoulders tilted a little bit if he gets off the field after he does it. He didn't do that at all. It's amazing to me that people don't see it that way. I counted 8 steps. I've heard 7. I've heard 10 over toward the Steelers bench after a third down play. Both punting units were on the field along with Cassius Marsh, who is not on the punt team. He was not celebrating anymore at that point. He was preening, and he was drawing an unnecessary amount of attention to himself. Nobody is going to stop, the post-sack celebration. No one's asking for that. I know that T.J. Watt did it in kind of odd circumstances, and it looked a little strange last couple of weeks. The momentum of the sack that he got wasn't really all that big of a deal, and seems to celebrate it a bit too much. Whatever it is that Marsh did, I'm fine with that. But you can't continue to kind of try to show up your former team by walking over to their sideline after a play. You need to get your butt off the field because, the game needs to go on. The fact that they flagged him is not even remotely surprising to me under the climate of rules that the NFL told every team and has been hotly discussed when Marsh was with the team and when he was not with the team. He needed to be fully aware of what the situation was. So his efforts both on the sidelines to deflect the situation as if he didn't do anything wrong, and his post-game comments regarding somehow the official attacked him, I think are completely out of line and not indicative of somebody dealing with their mistake in a reasonable professional manner. And it's unfortunate that it's the talking point of what should be a pretty fun game for Bears fans, a team that's not particularly good. Saw their quarterback have one heck of a second half.
He did.
It was fun to watch. You saw a lot of great things coming from his ability to get the ball down the field. And, yeah, I don't think that a couple of big calls went in their favor, but that's football. That happens. If you would have asked me before the game that Cassius Marsh was going to make some type of mistake to impact Chicago's chances to win the game, I would have laughed because I wouldn't have imagined it'd be a close game if he was getting significant snaps. But that's what happened. It's a weird year, I think, for both teams. They're seeing some strange things, and that was just the latest for Pittsburgh.
All right. So, is there a fine line in this at all? And when it comes to sportsmanlike conduct versus taunting in your mind, for example, T.J. Watt dances around like a nut. Now he's celebrating, and I think he's celebrating. So I don't think he's taunting. But if you're the quarterback laying there, you're not feeling great about watching it.
I think that's an excellent question. It was one I had a long conversation with a colleague about this morning. The question really was, do you, in that situation, if Marsh needs to be penalized, is it more of a delay of game issue or is it taunting? Because if it's taunting, you open up a lot of other things. I think that's fair. It's valid to explore. And this, at the same time, it's so NFL for them to emphasize a rule. I find that the funniest thing in the world. It's black and white. You either call it or you don't. I don't understand the emphasis of the rule. Are you saying there are rules that you don't call because you just don't feel like emphasizing it that day? If that's what they want to do, if they want to drive down what they feel to be an excessive amount of taunting, it almost seems to me like you could just throw the same flag for delay of game, because that would handle sack celebrations, if that's not what you're into. Doing it basically on top of the quarterback, or having to step on the quarterback to get out of the way so you can free up room so everyone can see you. All these things are very unsportsmanlike conduct. But here's the issue. Now, I'm not sure if you saw this on Thursday night or not. Jalen Ramsey got 2 taunting penalties.
Yes.
I think the first one was in the first quarter, maybe the second one was in the third quarter.
Yeah, they claim that the first one was only a personal foul penalty, the one on the sideline, and that the second one was taunting. That's why he wasn't thrown out.
Okay, that is in complete contrast to the truth. The official blatantly says unsportsmanlike conduct, taunting in the first penalty that he got.
True.
He got 2 of them. That's
True.
an ejection.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to eject Jalen Ramsey on a primetime game? No. Sunday night. I said Thursday earlier. I apologize. It was a Sunday night game. You don't want to do that. You don't want to lose your star power on a big stage for something like that. Yet at the same time, the NFL either didn't think of this ahead of time, or they just don't care, because taunting is unsportsmanlike. 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties is an automatic ejection. Personal foul penalties, it's not. So in other words, Jalen Ramsey could have taken his elbow into the guy's head in both of those plays and not been thrown out of the game. Which one are you really emphasizing here? Why is taunting a part of the solution to keep players in the game? You weren't willing to enforce it on Jalen Ramsey for doing it, obviously, to a point where, not to be a conspiracy theorist, and I don't want to create animosity with what I'm saying, but there's no other explanation than New York called down to the official and told him the first one was a personal foul, not unsportsmanlike conduct. And he had to go announce that to the crowd.
Yes,
You've never heard officials doing that. It's like a politician up on stage.
I know.
They're rewriting the history as they go, and that is the reason why Jalen Ramsey was not ejected from the game.
Right.
So again, my question is, in all of this emphasis, did you not think that there might be a situation in which a guy is going to get 2 taunting penalties in a game? If you are emphasizing it even more, you should technically, by your own rule, throw him out. But now you're just not going to, because you're going to pretend that it didn't happen. All right, if that's what we're going to do here, the whole thing just seems so needless to me. And I get what they're saying. Mike Tomlin is one of the first people to say it. They don't want a certain level of showmanship being directed at the opponent, at the opposing team, at the guy on the ground. I get that. I can see why they'd want to do that. But the problem that I have with the alleged emphasis of it all is they're going to widen the net, not enforce it more closely.
Right.
They're going to start calling more things. And really, to me, what it means is, when in doubt, we're going to throw a flag, because that's usually what the NFL does. That's going to create a problem. Now, I honestly don't think what Cassius Marsh did was ambiguous. I think that was pretty obvious. I think that's what taunting is in the NFL, and I don't think that you need it. I think it's silly. I think it was a coverage sack anyway. I don't think he could have celebrated, done his thing. waved at the Steelers, I guess. I don't know. I don't blame him for doing that, but he carried on for an extended period of time. I think that deserves a penalty, but the overarching issue in the league is just going to be this is going to cause more problems than it's going to bring benefits to the game.
So the game itself, the NFL is not like college football. There aren't any style points. In fact, I heard two guys arguing earlier in the week about Oregon and Washington, how Oregon had a touchdown late called back and then just decided to take a knee. And he said they should have gone for it again so they could get the style points because, well, the NFL isn't like that. The Steelers have won 4 in a row. What did you think of the performance?
Overall, I don't think they played very well. I think what we're seeing is a team that is learning how to be good. And they're doing that in a way that we really have to almost evaluate play by play. They're a young team. They're building something. I think 5-3 for them is fantastic. I think that's a great way for them to start. If they make the playoffs, they make the playoffs. I don't think they're going very far. I think it's going to be more of conditions of their opponents down the stretch more than it's going to be them. But that's not a bad thing either. What we know of the Steelers, they can put together a drive or two. They're starting to make bigger plays more consistently than they did. They're not going to be great in that regard, though. They're getting solid play from one of the most limited passers in the NFL. And he's not turning the ball over, which is a huge help. It's 4 games in a row now he has to turn the ball over.
Right.
Huge help for what they're trying to do. But we're going to see them really, deciding who they are on a, if not a series per series basis, then definitely a snap to snap basis, because they completely fell apart in the second half. Their offensive line got bullied for pretty much the entire game. They took a step back in that regard. I say that loosely because I'm not really sure we can measure their progress so closely right now as an offensive unit. They're still not at their best. Dan Moore is not a long-term solution for them for this season. I can't imagine they want Dan Moore playing as much as he has. They really hope to get Zach Banner back. I'm not sure what the situation is there, but they need him back. They need to get Dan Moore off the field. He was really, really bad on Monday. If they can shore that group up, they can put some more consistency within their offense. But their play calling is largely limited due to a lack of protection, due to if they can't really get after the opponent on the ground, which they did a couple times. And credit to Chicago, I thought their defense played well. They did a great job. That team is a lot better than I think people have given them credit for. They're not a great team either, but they're not far off of Pittsburgh's level, if at all. I think they're very similar. I think one has, the way it looks right now, kind of a different immediate future, having a good young quarterback, which is what Justin Fields is. But overall, I think what you're seeing within the Steelers on offense, they're going to be inconsistent. They're going to be overpowered. Defensively, though, there are significant lapses of time in which they're incapable of stopping an opponent, and we saw that late. His fourth quarter was awful for the Steelers defense. Arthur Millette, I was joking about this on a podcast last night, but it isn't often that you see an NFL defensive back running straight behind or straight down the sideline, chasing a player who has the ball outside of the numbers.
Right.
That means that guy got completely burned.
Yes.
Something bad happened. Arthur Millette did that on 2 consecutive snaps.
Yeah.
Something bad happened, and Steelers only paid for it on one of those plays. Overall, defensively, again, they're getting away with Cam Hayward and his ability to wreck game plans up front. I thought Hayward played very well. We're not seeing great impact from their inside linebackers. That's been a consistent problem. You're getting some plays from their secondary overall, but like I said, something like what we saw Arthur Millette do, they need to retool that. That's going to be a problem. And frankly, really, it should have cost them the game. If not for Cassius Marsh, if not for Chicago's own unique decisions on defense trying to stop Pittsburgh on a final drive, Pittsburgh really shouldn't win that game. So I like the fact that they are building and they are learning, but it speaks to a lot of things that they are 5-3. One of those things, though, is stuff that's not in their control and is not going to last the rest of the season. They are really kind of a 3-4 game losing streak waiting to happen. And the fact that they're favored right now, I saw 9.5 over Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take Detroit all day. And that Pittsburgh isn't 10 points better than anybody in the NFL. I don't care who it is.
Can I ask you about more for a second? We kept seeing the Bears line up offside. Now, it's their fault because you can look at the ball, all right? But I thought one of the reasons they lined up offside is because Moore, I thought, was lining up in the backfield because he was so far back. What did you think about his alignment and the fact that I thought it was a potential penalty that wasn't called?
I think that has become let's go back to this. You remember Peyton Manning in his Broncos days, kind of toward the end of his physical ability, you saw really Adam Gase's offense along with Manning, which is nothing but a collection of small pick setting and screens in an alleged legal fashion. And that, maybe to answer my own question from earlier, that really is the penalty that doesn't get enforced in the NFL. It's hard to do it. The rule is ambiguous. It can go a couple different ways, but essentially you can't willingly set a pick, and you can't, that kind of contact within 2 yards is going to be, it looked at more severely than other parts of the field. Today, I think the evolution of that has become offensive linemen drifting further and further off the line.
Yes.
And if you look at it from a literal level, when the camera is perfectly in line with the line of scrimmage, the official sitting right there, it makes you wonder, like, why aren't you calling this? I don't understand. He's nowhere close to the line of scrimmage. This is not ambiguous. This is pretty clear as day. And to your point, I would say that, yes, we saw that a bit from Dan Moore. We absolutely saw it from the two Bears tackles.
Yes, no doubt.
Who not only were like a yard and a half off the ball, they were leaving before the ball was snapped on pretty much every pass play.
Yep.
Now, if you're Chicago and to a degree Pittsburgh, if you have bad tackles, you've got to find a way to help, and that is becoming a simple solution that the league is allowing them more and more leeway. This is just me speaking. I haven't researched this or anything. Watching a lot of football, tackles and offensive lines are lining up more in like a V pattern. Their tackles are further back than they have been in a long time.
Yeah.
And that helps you get into a pass set when you are a physically limited player the way Dan Moore is. So, yes, to that end, I can see why Robert Quinn was having a problem. And one of the ones they called him on, half of Quinn's body was over the line.
Right, exactly.
The ball.
Yep.
It was like, wow, that's really bad.
Yeah.
I watched it again this morning, and it was like that a lot. It wasn't a rare situation. Now, usually the officials will call that early in a game to kind of set the tone that, like, hey, you need to watch this. I'm paying attention,
right.
And they'll play a little bit more evenly. But we're not seeing, except for Chuks Okorafor has been flagged on it twice this year. We're not seeing the offensive linemen returning to even like a half yard off the line of scrimmage.
Right.
They're way off, and they look like flankers.
Yeah.
So I'm not entirely sure what the thought is behind that, or if there is kind of some growing animosity among defenses in that regard. But for Dan Moore's sake, for him to have the game that he did, playing that way, it just goes to show that he's really overmatched, and they're going to need to find something else.
Yeah, because when Penn State played Indiana on the college side, Jack Ham and I felt the right tackle consistently was lining up in the backfield, trying to get himself as far back as we could. So, I mean, it's something we've talked about before, but it not one time was brought up by anybody. Neal, always great to have you with us. Thanks so much for your time.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.